Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Wisdom from the Akasha podcast. My name is Susie. I am your host and I am an Akashic Records teacher and practitioner. Today I want to talk a little bit about the most commonly asked question in Akashic Records readings, and when people come to learn for themselves, undoubtedly one of the first questions that they ask is, what is my soul's purpose? Because this is undoubtedly the most frequently asked question, I have pulled together a soul purpose masterclass, which I'm running in August. And today I really want to explain to you my perspective, what I have learned about soul purpose over the years that I've been working with the Akashic Records, so that you can get a feel for what we will be talking about in more depth in the masterclass, but also so you can start reflecting on this point in your own time and in your own practice. Of course, I would love to see you all there at the masterclass in August, but if you don't feel that that's right for you, it's not time yet, that's also completely okay. I just want to introduce this topic to start you all thinking about it from the level that we see it from the Akashic Records perspective. That do want to join, I will of course leave the link in the show notes. And if you have any questions, you have problems registering, anything like that, please feel free just to reach out to me directly, either by email or over on Instagram. The first query that people have is, well, does everybody have a soul purpose? And absolutely categorically, yes, every soul has a soul purpose. Your soul would not choose to incarnate into such a difficult density as we have here on Earth if there wasn't a reason for incarnating. Even though I know lots of you will be sat there thinking, I don't think I signed up for this, or I'm not sure that my soul really wants to be here. Maybe it made a mistake. Maybe it ticked the wrong box on the pre-Earth school intake form, but I can promise you that every single soul that is here incarnated at this time wanted to have an earthly incarnation, and there are reasons behind why that soul wanted to have that earthly incarnation, and those reasons are what we call the soul purpose. If you can imagine your soul prior to coming into the incarnation, sitting around with your guide team, with other souls who are in your soul family, and your soul is sitting contemplating, right, what do I want to achieve? How can I best achieve that? What does my soul really need for its next level of evolution? Prior to coming into the incarnation, your soul chooses its purposes for incarnation. And this is partly what the information that is inputted into your soul blueprint. We talk a lot in the Akashic Records about the soul blueprint, and this would be connected to level 5 of the light grid. In that soul blueprint, there is a phenomenal amount of information, and part of the information that is contained within that soul blueprint are aspects of the soul purpose. Now, at this level, the level of the soul blueprint, the aspects of soul purpose that are included in that and that we connect to when we ask this question, what is my soul purpose in the Akashic Records, it can feel quite vague from our earthly perspective. So, for example, you may ask, what is your soul purpose? When you have a reading with somebody like myself, and you might get an answer to say, to embody the light, or to come to the realization of self-love. And this can sometimes frustrate people when they ask this question, and it can frustrate people for one of two reasons. So, number one is just the fact that it feels very vague and they don't understand how that relates to their normal everyday life straight away. But oftentimes, when they go and reflect upon it, they can see how different relationships that they've had, different circumstances that they've experienced in their life actually do relate back to an aspect of their purpose, because, of course, purpose is a big topic. The second reason that sometimes people get a bit frustrated by that answer is what they're actually looking for is career advice. And what will happen sometimes when somebody asks this question, when I'm holding a reading for them, is the Akashic Records will actually say, you actually have a question about your career, do you want to ask that instead? You can't kid the Akashic Records. They know exactly what your intentions are and what you want to know. And they do always want to give you information that is most helpful to what you need to know about on that day. And of course, you can ask career questions. As always, the guides will not tell you what to do. So you can ask them, should I leave this job? And they're not going to say yes or no. But what they're going to do is they're going to give you things to consider about that job at that time. If you are unsure about the types of questions that you can ask in your own Akashic Records or when you go for an Akashic Records reading, always remember there is a free ebook on my website with 101 questions that work really well. They are separated into different sections and there's a gap underneath each question so that if you're working in your own Akashic Records, you're able to jot down your answers. Please do feel free to head over to the website and download that. At the level of the soul blueprint, there are often more than one objective set by the soul prior to coming into the incarnation. It's very normal for what you would consider to be an old soul, an experienced soul, someone who has done many incarnations, that there is not just one sole purpose. And because of this, the question, what aspect of my soul purpose should I focus on at this moment in time, can be a really helpful one when you're working with the Akashic Records. Depending on where you are in your own life, your purpose is going to change as you go through your incarnation. Your purpose at 20 is going to be different most of the time to your purpose at 40 and then again at your purpose at 60. So we have to remember that it's not just a one-time question for the Akashic Records and it's not just a one-time answer. Your purpose is something that's going to develop and evolve as you do. Not only do we have this higher level multidimensional aspect to soul purpose, but then soul purpose itself is a multi-layered aspect. It's essentially our job here whilst on earth to align to our soul, to align to our soul purpose, and to make a conscious decision about how we are going to embody and how we are going to express creatively our soul's purpose. This is where our free will comes in. We have the free will to align or not align. We have the free will to decide how we want to creatively express our soul's purpose. And this is the free will aspect. So yes, there are purposes set by our soul prior to coming into the incarnation, but then with our human self, we have to align to that and we have to decide how we're going to express that in the world. Of course, the more that you heal, the more that you focus on your own development, the more you can move into a place of alignment. We sometimes struggle with feeling aligned because there's other work that needs to be done first before we can move into a place of alignment. This does not mean that you have to be perfect or fully healed or any of that nonsense to live a soul aligned life or to start connecting into your soul's purpose. It just means that sometimes the focus is on this is the thing that needs to be worked on first when you are connecting into that soul's purpose. From a technical perspective, being in alignment to your soul's purpose is connecting to and being in alignment with what's called your Hara line, Hara. And the Hara line is very connected to the transpersonal or the fifth dimensional chakra system. If you would like me to go into more detail about that type of stuff, please just let me know. But it's first necessary before you start worrying about the technical aspect of working with and connecting into those chakras and the Hara line. It's first really helpful to spend some time reflecting on your values and what we call your soul assets. Soul assets are aspects of yourself, gifts and skills that you have that are just innate to you as a soul. And of course, your values are what you think are important in this lifetime for you. Your soul purpose is connected to your intuition, so that internal guidance system, and also your creative energy. And both of these things are feminine energy dominant. And for a lot of people, especially for women in this lifetime, they are very disconnected from that internal feminine energy. Think how much of our life we have been told that we have to hustle, we have to work as hard as we possibly can, we have to be very productive, we have to cram so much into our day. That hustle culture is very much masculine energy dominant. To be able to connect into your intuition and your creativity, you need to make space. You need to be able to nurture your internal feminine energy. And we're not taught how to do this. For a lot of people, it can first be necessary to try to get into balance. This is not saying that the masculine energy is bad, neither energy is bad. What we are always looking for on our spiritual journey is a balance, and it's a balance between our internal masculine and our internal feminine energy, which is correct for us as an individual, because everybody is different in respect of how much masculine energy they need to connect to and work with, and how much internal feminine energy they need to work with and connect to. It is through the connection to the creative energy that you're going to find expression of your soul's purpose. And it is the use of that intuition and that internal guidance system that's going to act as the navigator for you to know when you are and when you are not in alignment to your soul and its purpose at this time. What I want to do now is offer you some reflection questions that you can work with so that you can start feeling into what might be my soul assets and what might be my soul's purpose based on those assets. First question to ask yourself is, what did I really enjoy to do as a child? What were the dreams and aspirations I had when I was a child? If you find this difficult to do, if you had a particularly difficult childhood, if you maybe have some soul fragmentation from your childhood and you can't remember, that's okay. I'm going to give you some other reflection questions to try with. But if you can remember back to the childhood and you do have memories of those dreams that you talked about, really feel into those and how they apply now. We have to remember that when we come into an incarnation, that's our closest connection to our most authentic self before we go through the programming and conditioning of our parents, of society. There can be some really good clues in what you wanted to do as a child or what you really enjoyed to do as a child in respect of what those soul assets are. And then from there, you can feel into what your purpose may be at this time. Second question to ask yourself is, if money was no object, if I had no responsibilities, no bills to pay, what would I do with my time? I know there are going to be some of you out there who think, well, I would just want to sit on the beach all day, or I wouldn't want to do anything other than sit and watch Netflix all day, but I can guarantee that wouldn't be the case. You may feel like that if you need to have a rest and you need to have a break, but from an everyday perspective, humans love to make some form of contribution to their society, especially when they feel that call to service. So ask yourself, if I had the choice of how I could be of service, what would I do every single day that would really light me up and bring me joy inside? The third question is, when was the last time you were in true flow state? So what were you doing when you lost all sense of time and you were just completely engrossed or immersed in something you did? Now, this is not scrolling on TikTok. I know it can be something that takes a lot of your time, but that is not being in flow state. That's being usually in a form of dissociation. But when were you last doing something and you just absolutely were immersed in the experience and you just felt completely at flow? This will also give you some hints. The last question I want you to consider is, how do you want to be remembered? So I know a lot of people don't like thinking about their death and the death process and one day they won't be here, but actually feeling into, what legacy do I want to leave? If I was on my deathbed, what would I want to be able to look back and say, I was so proud that I achieved that. I was so proud I helped in that way. Feel into that for yourself, because again, this can be a hint into the direction for you. Now that you have some questions to use in your reflection practice, let's look at some signs for when you do know that you are in alignment with your soul's purpose. Number one is life just flows. Okay. This doesn't mean that life is always easy, and I'll cover that in a little bit, but life just has a flow to it. There's lots of signs and synchronicities, and you feel guided, and you feel like, even though there may be difficulties and obstacles ahead, that no matter what, you have the energy and you have the ability, because you have this drive behind you of the flow of life. As I mentioned, this does not mean that everything is always easy when life is in flow. It means that you can face those obstacles head on. I absolutely love the work that I get to do. I love to be able to help people access their Akashic records, to teach people about the Akashic records. I love everything that I do. I don't like technical stuff. I am, as you can probably tell, not particularly technically minded. I don't like admin. There are parts of my job that I don't like, just like every person on planet Earth. However, because my desire to be of service and to help people work with the Akashic records, get in alignment to their soul, and really live a truly soul aligned life, that overpowers anything, any resistance I have in respect of doing the bits that I don't like. And that's a really good sign that you are in alignment. Of course, along with this being connected to the flow and having such a big why that no matter what happens, you can face it, this of course leads to a state of joy. Life becomes more joy filled. It doesn't mean that there aren't days and times where things happen. We are all in a human incarnation, but the majority of your life is spent in this joy filled state when you are living in alignment. It helps you to feel this sense of expansion, and you're living from a place of heart centered expansion in your day to day life when you're in alignment. You tend to be a lot more focused when you do have this soul alignment, because you know where you're going. You know that all of the steps that you're taking are moving you to that point of serving in the way that you're choosing to serve, creating what you're choosing to create. And because you're paying attention to that internal navigation system, if something doesn't feel quite right, or you feel like you're perhaps going in a direction that isn't in alignment, you know, and you change that direction, and you have no problems in doing that. And last but by no means least, you feel a lot more connected to the divine, to source consciousness, to God, however you want to define it, because you're paying attention to that internal navigation system, your soul, which is, of course, itself an individualized fractal of source consciousness. You're constantly in communication and connection with the divine. You also are, of course, experiencing those signs and synchronicities. So even when it does get a little bit difficult, you know you're on the right track, and you've got the energy and you're at the right frequency and vibration to be able to keep moving forward, even when there are little bumps or little obstacles in the road, because you feel divinely guided and divinely supported. I really hope that this episode has been helpful. It's given you a bit of a bigger perspective on how complex and multifaceted the concept of soul purpose is. And I really do hope that I see lots of you at the Soul Purpose Masterclass live in August. If you can't attend live, don't panic. You will receive a copy of the recording. I have said it will be around 2 hours long. It may go over that. I will always offer lots of time for questions and answers in all of the sessions that I do. So my times are always an estimate. Of course, if people have more questions, I will stay on the call for that. I would love to see you all there. As I said earlier, I'll put the link into the show notes, and I will see you next time for the next episode.